So we can fire up a new tab here and get into vSphere. We can take a look at which virtual machines we'd like to migrate over to our Nutanix cluster. So we've got SQL Server, we've got Windows 10, Windows 2012, they're all running here. So what I'd like to do is move these virtual machines over to Nutanix. And the way to do that is with the aptly named Move tool. I've already deployed the Move tool into its virtual machine. It provides a nice little web interface for us to go through the process of actually moving a set of virtual machines out of our old infrastructure and into our new infrastructure. It takes about 20 minutes to deploy this virtual machine, but for the sake of brevity, I have pre-configured this. So I've got an old vSphere environment here. I've got our Nutanix cluster as our target. Create my migration plan. I'll just call this guy old to new. Go into our old vSphere environment. Grab our target here. I think I'll use that storage container I just created, the VMs container. I'd like my Windows boxes here, so we'll go through here, pick those VMs. I'll pick a target network here, and it will start checking capacity and make sure that they can all migrate over and everything will work nicely. And at this point, we just need to feed it credentials. Validate that. And at this point, we can kick off the migration process. So now we can take a look at the status of the migration. It'll tell us how much is remaining and where we are in the process. What Move will do is it will seed data in the moving process, and the idea behind seeding data is that it will copy the data from the virtual machines over to the cluster first before it tries to execute the cutover process. And the idea being, of course, that we want to shorten downtime as much as possible. Okay, and the data has finished migrating, so we'll go over to our progress here. It takes about 1 minute to do the cutover. Select them all. Says it'll shut it down, disconnect it, and it will be migrated. Cool. All right. So now what we can do is go back to our Nutanix console, sign back in here. And once we get signed in, we'll jump over to the Virtual Machines tab. And should see, yep, there we go. There's our virtual machine create tasks. See a little bit of activity in our IOPS and bandwidth. Go over here, and there we are. There's our virtual machines. They've been moved over from our old vSphere cluster, and now they have been converted over to working virtual machines inside Nutanix. Okay, great. So what if I do if I am already a Nutanix customer and I have ESX running on top of my Nutanix clusters? What do I do then? Fortunately, there is a migration tool. Same idea, same virtual machines, different cluster that we're showing you here now. I've got a vSphere instance where my vCenter is looking at two different clusters. I'm going to convert cluster number 2 here. That maps to this interface. And what we're going to do is go through the process of converting this cluster to AHV. So first thing we do here is make sure that vCenter is not running on the cluster we're going to convert. That will break it. So the vCenter instance here is over here on cluster 1. We just have the CVMs and then the virtual machines that we moved earlier running on this cluster. So we'll go back in here, go into settings, go to Convert Cluster, say available hypervisors, one AHV. So we'll go ahead and enter our IP address and credentials to do all validation. Okay. Pause here for a second for the validation. Of course, it noticed we don't have our standard licensing. It's in evaluation mode. That's fine. Go ahead and click Convert. Cluster operations. Yep, no problem. Keep in mind you do need to have DRS set to fully automated, and you need to have HA turned on, but you have to have admission control for HA turned off in order for this to work and complete the validation process. All right, we're about a little under 2 hours in. We're almost done here. The thing that's important to point out here is not so much the time it takes to convert the cluster, because that takes a while. You're installing all new hypervisor and reconfiguring everything. The important thing to point out here is the amount of time it takes to actually do the virtual machine conversion. That's the important bit, is it's only taking 10 at the outset, 15 seconds to actually go through the process of converting the virtual machines over to work in AHV. And so the cool thing about this is that the machines outside of a very short window are essentially untouched. So the machines, the virtual machines themselves, they are still running. The virtual machines are available in their power state that they were in when they were running on the ESX cluster. And of course you can see now this is all showing has disappeared and the virtual machines are gone from the cluster we looked at originally. So we have successfully converted over, or almost successfully converted over, our ESX cluster. Yep, it just finished. So we're done. Took under 2 hours, or actually it looks like right at 2 hours to do the entire conversion. Again, the virtual machine cutover process was just 10 seconds or so for the virtual machine. So from the user's perspective, this was pretty close to seamless. And now we have AHV running on top of this cluster.